welcome today to today's episode of the podcast. I am thrilled today to have with us Dr. Karey O'Hara, who is a professor at Arizona State University, who's doing a lot of really interesting and incredibly useful and practical research involving families, family law, how to help children flourish. So welcome. I'm so grateful you're here with me today.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. I'm a big fan of your podcast so far.
I
I'll put
appreciate
that
that
there.
since it's still pretty new. So the fact that you're even aware of it, I really appreciate. So let's just get started. Maybe just tell everybody and give me more insight. How did you get into this work? It seems like it's such a niche area for people
Yeah.
to have landed in. So you started in psychology, right? Like undergrad in
Yeah.
psychology. Tell us how you got where you are now.
Yeah. Well, so actually my sort of passion for this work, I think, started even a little bit earlier than college. In my own personal life, I didn't have a parent. I didn't personally go through parental separation or divorce, but I saw we had a when I was young, we had a close family friend who was essentially caught in between the family law system and the dependency system.
Mm.
And even at a young age, I was thinking, wow, like there's so much going on here that has to do with psychology and how it's interacting with the law. And one legal system's telling this family to do one thing and it's contradicted in another way and things like that. And so already I was starting to think like, okay, how do we
Mm.
this whole intersection between psychology and law, particularly in family law, which is so interesting to me because in the broader field of psychology and law, family law is like a tiny little flavor that which I think
Right.
so odd because we're talking about families and relationships and children, child development, these things obviously very uh relevant to psychology.
So, did you know then when you went off to undergrad, I want to study psychology because I'm so interested in this?
I did. I didn't know that psychology and law existed at the time. So I actually started, I think, as a criminal justice major because I was interested in law. I thought maybe I was going to be a lawyer. And then I worked in a research lab as an undergraduate, a psychology research lab. And I was like, oh, wow, there's this whole intersection of work, this whole field that intersects legal issues with psychological issues. And that's where I sort of found my home. And so I got my undergrad degree in psychology. And then I wasn't sure again what to
Right.
do. So I got a master's degree in forensic psychology. Um, and then at that point, I still thought I maybe would go to a JD PhD program and do both. But eventually I landed into just really focusing on clinical psychology. So I'm trained as a clinical psychologist. I focus on children and families in particular.
So, did you ever practice with people therapeutically, or were you always on that research academic side?
No, my during my graduate training and predoctoral internship, which is essentially like our version of residency, I was practicing, providing therapy and assessment services for primarily for children.
Let's talk about some of the highlights, like what you're working on now, and also point people in the direction of some of the greatest hits of what you've found and what
Yeah.
you've learned and what you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if I think about my research program as a whole, I think there's kind of two sides to it, which are completely intertwined. And so one side I would say is more of like a basic psychological science where I'm trying to understand like how people's behavior and emotions and processes. Like how do people cope with stress? How do people cope with terrible things happen in their life? Like we can
Right.
all imagine we've all been through some version of terrible things. How did we get through it? What were the factors that determined whether we are doing well today or whether we're not, or so really thinking about what are the risk and protective factors involved with adaptation. How do people adapt to really stressful situations? So
Mhm.
at a basic level, trying to understand that. Um, and we've kind of out of that work, my own and many other people's work that I've built on, we're starting to kind of gather gather this body of research on risk and protective factors in the context of stress. So everyone goes through stress in some way. What makes the difference? How do people fare? What makes the difference between this child who went through a highly contentious divorce who did just fine, and this other child who really didn't? What made the difference there? And so trying to think about those processes, the interpersonal processes, the psychological, behavioral processes, and the things that really kind of come to the top when you think about that body of literature as a whole are things like coping efficacy. When people feel like, I've got this, like I can deal, this is hard and I can deal with it, huge. That's a huge psychological protective factor, right? When they feel like they're loved, when children feel like they're cared for and loved and they matter to their parents or some other adult, huge, can make a huge difference in how they fare, regardless of what the stressor is. And we've seen this in, um, you know, kids who are in child protective services. We've seen this in kids who go through their parents' divorce. We've seen this in kids who lose a parent to death. It doesn't really matter the context. That sort of general principle hold that when children have that relationship with an adult, a caregiver of some sort, that is warm and supportive, we know that that can carry them through a lot of bad stuff. Stuff like that. High quality parenting, which is an academic term, but really it means um, parents who use parenting strategies that are characterized essentially by, like, again, warmth, support,
Mhm.
telling your kids you love them. And then on the other side, also having really effective discipline strategies. So,
Right.
having consistent rules that you follow through. You say you're going to do something. This is hard for me. I have a 2-year-old. I have to remind myself all the time, do not say something that you can't follow through with.
I come in a lot and try to help with these parent-child contact problems where, we've got kid running away from one parent into the arms of the more coddling parent, right? And I'm trying to diffuse this, get the therapist involved, and yet also then try to train that more coddling parent that the consequences are okay and healthy and good and important and all these things, right? So, I mean, I see that
Yeah.
a lot in these cases that have gone on. Most of these are ones that have gone on for years. And
Yeah.
now the teenager is like cuddling up to the parent that's easier.
Yeah, of
'Cause it's
course.
just a
And
dynamic that high quality parenting is interesting because high quality
yeah.
parenting is not just coddling.
No, it's definitely
It's
not.
not, right? And so
Yeah.
parents need to hear that message too. So it's interesting
Well,
you
and
mentioned
it's
that
interesting.
definitionally.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because again, thinking about it from that coddling parent's perspective, they think, I can imagine it's logical if you're in that parent's perspective and or from that parent's perspective and you think, well, my kids are going through so much stress, like I don't want to add anything. I'm just gonna be the easygoing and make it easier for them. That makes sense. Problem is, again, from a psychological, really trying to get at that process, we know that when kids don't have routines, clear consequences, follow through, they actually, even if you don't think this is true, because a lot of parents, they get mad in the moment when you hold your ground, of course. But actually, what we know is that children who don't have that feel less secure in
Mm.
their family relationships. So even though they're mad in the moment, it
Yeah.
actually makes them feel safe, secure, like life is predictable. Which, if you think about it, it's like if any of us go into a situation and someone says, "Okay, here's what's going to happen. If you do this, then this is going to happen, and you do this is going to happen." You may not like it, but you're going to have a more sense of control over your life, right? Because you know clearly what's going to happen.
For the kids, that is it the same kind of like classes, group, online, coping,
Yeah.
kind of a whole bunch of different varieties of that you're trying out?
Yeah. So on the child side, yes, coping. That's kind of the process that we're targeting, helping kids help themselves feel better when these really stressful things happen. And so we're pulling kind of strategies from the larger child clinical psychology therapy world to learn about kind of generic coping strategies, like relaxation training, for example. And we're trying to test how that works or how it could work in this context to help kids deal with this particular stressor. And in that one, we have a program called Project Brain Team, where we've developed 4 modules. They're like little games, online games that kids play, and they learn these different coping strategies. And we're conducting a randomized trial right now. We have like 30 kids left to enroll. So,
Mm.
any kids 9 to 12 that want to do this, send them my way. They can earn money and prizes and things. We really want to know if this works. So we're getting close. But what we're going to learn from that study is which of these coping strategies are really helping kids.